All right, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Tech Talks 4, which we air right now. For those of you who are familiar with the concept, so Tech Talks community, so we always try more technical event for our beloved partners and customers, and for all of those who are interested in extreme technologies, and probably not only in extreme technologies, but in networking in general. So because of the obvious reasons, we couldn't make it an on-site event, which was planned initially for May. So we were supposed to meet with you guys in Warsaw. So apparently this is not possible. And we decided not to kind of cancel it completely, but rather take it to a new format, to the online format. And that's how the whole concept of Tech Talks 4.0 on air popped up. So welcome once again. And I know that many of us think that, okay, now most of us are working from home, so probably we have much more time. And probably it's a good idea to have something, remote in an online format. And this is easy for everybody, but basically this may not be the truth because everyone is at home. You have your kids, you have your families, and probably for you, it's not easier to be connected to something like this than going onto an on-site event. And that's why we highly appreciate your attention and highly appreciate your time that you decided to spend with us today. We will be learning all together, so we will be learning with you as well, because for us, it's also a learning experience how to make such a massive and advanced event online. So we will be using the Zoom platform for all the sessions that are coming, and I will have details on the sessions themselves a bit later. So a few tips for you to how to use Zoom if you are seeing this platform for the first time, or not for the first time, but you kind of a bit forget. For all the questions that might pop up in your head, we highly appreciate the questions. Okay, we don't want to make this event like a unidirectional. It will be very nice if we manage to make it really, really interactive. So all the questions are highly appreciated and welcome. So for the questions, for you not to forget them, and what is more important, so that we keep the track of questions, please use the Q&A panel. There's a small button at the bottom of the Zoom client, which is called Q&A, where you can put all your questions, and the SC team, which is massively present on the session today, we'll try to answer the questions online, or if we don't have enough time, or if the number of questions will be really, really high, what we promise to do is to get all the questions that you put in the Q&A panel and answer them offline. And before we start the next session in a week, we promise to send all the answers to you. So you will get your all the answers to all of your questions. At the same time, there is a nice mechanism in Zoom, which is called raise the hand. So if you want to say something, just raise the hand, press that button, raise the hand. And if the time permits, and if let's say the presentation flow permits, we will allow you to speak. We will kind of unmute you. Okay, but we'll see how it goes, because the number of participants is really, really high and it's growing. And we'll basically see. Okay. I have started the recording of the session, so please don't worry. You will get the recording and you will get the slides if there are any, because what we initially planned to do, we planned not to focus much on the slides. We tried to make it really interactive sessions with a lot of demonstrations, live demos, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, don't worry, you will get the recording, you will get the slides, you will get everything from us. Another thing that is going to show up during the session and during the sessions, during the other sessions that we're going to have, is polling. Okay, so at some point in time, we will ask you a question. I promise the questions will be pretty simple, just to draw your attention back to the webinar, back to the session if you were distracted for some reason. So expect some questions to pop up They will be either a single or multiple answer questions. You just click on the right answer and click submit, and we are done. Okay, so I will be giving the floor back to Piotr. Just one last thing that I wanted to mention is that stay safe. I hope that your families are okay, and I hope that you are okay. Please be safe and take all the precautions. Now let's use this time to learn about the subject that we are all passionate about. Okay, so Piotr, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirill. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to present on our first Tech Talk on the air today. So first of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Piotr Szołkowski. I am pre-sales support engineer in Poland, and together I will be leading the presentation. After me, there will be a Timo that will also have a part of the presentation, as well as Emre. So there will be three of us presenting today. And as Kirill mentioned, the idea of this webinar is to make it, let's say, full of demos of different stuff. We will be showing some stuff, of course, remotely in our lab, which we have here in Poland, in Warsaw. As it will be, everything will be live. So we may have some issues. I hope not. For now, I heard some problems with the voice. I hope that it will be going okay through the presentation. So first of all, I would like to start with the agenda. So we will talk about Extreme Management Center, about the components of the Management Center, and it will be related to the third-party equipment. As well, then we will move to how Extreme Network Access Control works. The idea is just to give you some kind of a schematic information how network access control works. So this will be covered on the slides, but with some animations. And then we will move to the demo, to the XMC and ExtremeControl demo. Then we will cover some third-party support of the third-party devices support in XMC and ExtremeControl. And then I will pass over to Timo, and Timo will show Extreme Cloud IQ support in ExtremeControl. So we will connect Extreme Cloud IQ to our ExtremeControl solution. And then at the end, Emre will show a third-party Extreme Compliance support on Extreme Management Center. So that's let's say the plan. Maybe just to save the bandwidth, I will switch off the video. We will also give you some more, let's say, space on the screen. Okay, so first of all, what is Extreme Management Center? So Extreme Management Center is a collection of tools which we use to manage the network. It's also a collection of the tools to do a compliance check, to do a network access control, to collect alarms, to have analytics. So a lot of things. And if we see on this picture, I try to copy this from the real management center. I marked some areas with those frames with some light blue color, and those parts can support third-party devices. So let's say the only thing which we cannot really support third-party device is wireless, but of course it is not in terms of ExtremeControl, but it's in terms of the maps and so on. I will show it during demonstration, okay? So first the question is how network access control work. let's see what we have in our network. So we have edge devices, which can be a single switch. There can be a stack of switches. There may be also access points, and we want to protect the edge of the network where we connect where all the users are connected, and to those ports that are exposed to external people. So, for example, we have some sockets in our office. We have a wireless. So those edge ports we want to protect with network access control. There is, of course, also a network access control place in a data center, but this will not be a part of this webinar. Then we have a lot of different devices that we connect to the network. Today, we have more and more devices that we want to connect to the network. Some years ago, we had just computers. Right now, we have mobile phones, we have IoT devices, we have surveillance cameras, a lot of different devices that wants to connect to the network. And what we as administrators and we as a company, we want to protect your network from those devices, and also protect those devices inside the network, okay? So what is the idea then? So we want to enable a network access control. We want to enable 802.1x and MAC authentication on all the ports. The important thing is that we want to have all the ports configured in exactly the same way. We don't want to have exceptions, like, for example, that this particular port is configured only for the printer because printer does not support 802.1x. We want to avoid such situation. So the general rule for our network access control is to enable 802.1x and MAC authentication on all the ports that are on the network, and also, of course, on the wireless. So then we have our XMC. In XMC, we want to have also, we control extreme control. So we cannot have network access control without XMC. XMC is a central point of managing the network, as well as network access control, extreme network access control. So we have two engines, two control engines. We have a primary engine and secondary engine. We have two because of the redundancy, and this is minimum what we should have on the network. Of course, we can have more. So if we have like several locations and we want to have network access control system closer to the users, closer to the network which we protect, we may also add additional engine control engines. Then what we usually have at the enterprise network, we usually have Active Directory domain server where we store all the users. We store also groups to which users belongs to. So this is a repository of the data that we will be using during network access control evaluation. Okay, so right now let's have a look what will happen when we have a desktop computer that wants to connect to the network. And this desktop computer will have 802.1x enabled. So we usually have a choice of the algorithm, of the authentication algorithm that we will be using. The most commonly used is PEAP and also EAP-TLS. So the first one is using a username and password as a credential to access the network. The second one, EAP-TLS, is using certificates. So right now, when the computer connected to the switch, then the switch receives authentication requests. This is a logical schema, so we will not cover all the frames that are going back and forth. We will only cover let's say, a logic which is behind extreme access control. So then when switch receives such information, 802.1x request, doesn't matter if it is PEAP, EAP-TLS, or any other authentication mechanism, it encapsulates this frame into the radius packet and send it to the primary control engine. Of course, I will not cover here the redundancy, so we should have redundancy, but we will not cover this in the logical scheme. So when the primary control engine receives a radius request, there is a kind of a table, which I will show you. It's let's call it authentication table. So then there are rules where we can configure what we will do with this authentication. We can authenticate the user locally on the network access control, which is probably not the best idea because we have Active Directory where we have all the users stored there. We may also connect using the LDAP. So we can do LDAP authentication against Active Directory domain server. And then we will check, in case of PAP, we will check a username and password. So if the user put the correct username and password. Also in this authentication table, we can choose, because LDAP, let's say, is one of the authentication mechanisms, we can also use a radius against NPS, network policy server, which can be also installed on the Active Directory domain server. So when we send this request, we will get a reply. We will get a reply with accept or deny. So the username and password is correct, or the certificate is signed and is not on the certificate revocation list. Okay. So right now, the authentication mechanism stops and we start to do authorization. So we want to choose where this particular device or user will be connected to the network and which policy he will get. So right now we can check different things like time, we can check location, we can check type of the operating system on which the user logged in. We can check if the user logs in from a particular device, from a particular MAC address. So there is a lot of stuff, but most of this stuff is internal to the primary control engine. But there is one thing which we may use. It's a check if the user belongs to a specific group on the Active Directory. So we once again send a request, but this is not authentication request. This is a request to check if the user belongs to a specific group. And then we will get a response. The LDAP response will be, yes, the user request belongs to that group. And then we will match a specific authorization rule. So we have two tables, first one includes all the authentication rules. And the second table is the table where we have all the authorization rules. And then at the end, we send the response back to the switch, and we send the radius accept or radius deny. And there is also some vendor specific attributes. So right now, if we are talking with you, if we focus on the third-party devices, we can see that the only communication between, in this whole process, between the switch and the primary control engine is a radius protocol. So radius is very well defined. We have several attributes that are used, and those attributes are well defined. So there is no problem to support any third-party device on our network access control, unless they use some proprietary mechanism to do some stuff. But most of the switches, most of the vendors support standard radius attributes. So how the response may look like. So if we will take, for example, Exos switch, we have concept of the policies, and policy may include VLANs, may include quality of service, may include access lists. So for us, for Exos switch, it is enough to send not really a vendor-specific attribute. It's a standard attribute, but let's say the what we fill in this attribute, it's related to a specific vendor. So we send a policy name, which is enterprise user. We may also send different attributes. For example, if we want to decouple policy and VLAN assignment, we may send policy as a separate filter ID information, but also we may use RFC 3580, which will include the VLAN. The number which is marked on yellow, it's a VLAN. Okay, so we send VLAN 11. Now, if we will switch to let's say Exos switch that is connected to the Fabric Connect, we will send also a different attributes, and this second attributes FA VLAN ISIT is a vendor-specific attribute. So we send an information to the switch that we want to place this computer, which just authenticated, to VLAN 11, and also inform the Exos switch that this VLAN 11 should be connected on Extreme Fabric to service 12.0.11. Okay, so those are the attributes that we send to the switch. So even if we have Exos switch, we may have different definition of profiles which we send to a specific switch, because some switches may be connected to the fabric, some switches may use a standard authentication and standard policy attribute only. Some may use also, let's say, a hybrid mode where we use policy plus VLAN, which we assigned with separate values. Now, if we will switch to Cisco, on Cisco switch, we also use similar attributes, but the meaning is different. So for example, in this here, we have filter ID and we send a name which is called user in. It means that on the, when we have with the single switch, it's a Cisco switch, and we defined access list, which is named users, we may assign access list to the port where the user will authenticate. Okay. When we will have Aruba, Aruba may accept standard attributes. Aruba also have some different attributes like egress VLAN ID and the number. The number is really tricky. This is described in some RFC. It's very complicated. I just give you an example of the third party attributes that we can use here. Okay, so what is also very important, when we disconnect the computer, we need to have some way to inform our ExtremeControl that computer was disconnected. And this is radius accounting. So those are the, let's say, necessary things which we have to configure. So radius accounting is one of them. Okay, let's say that this desktop computer connected to the network, but 802.1x authentication was not valid. So it was, let's say, the user put the wrong password, or the user was using a computer which belonged to the different domain, and it was just rejected by the Active Directory server. So then we will go to the MAC authentication. This MAC authentication on the Exos switch may be done in a background. So we do, let's say, at the same time, we support MAC authentication and 802.1x authentication. It will be, for example, different on a Cisco switch. On Cisco switch, we will have like MAC authentication bypass. But let's see how it works. So we send, it's MAC authentication. In reality, the desktop computer sends a MAC, so sends some frame with a MAC address. Switch encapsulates this frame to the radius, and then we will get back the response, because in case of MAC address, we are not really focusing on checking if the username and password, which is derived from the MAC address, is correct, we just accept all the clients that connect with MAC authentication. We may, let's say, go through the MAC list, which we have on the ExtremeControl, to check if it is, for example, a printer, or if it is some kind of defined device that we want to place in a specific place. Otherwise, in case of MAC authentication, we use MAC authentication to redirect at the end the client to the captive portal where we will support guest access. Okay, so what we need for the visibility? Visibility is very important, and it's a lot of stuff done in terms of visibility at our XMC and ExtremeControl. So the important thing is DHCP request. The important thing is that if this device sends a DHCP request, the DHCP request reaches layer 3 switch, and then we should have a bootp relay that not only directs this DHCP request to the DHCP server, but also sends this request to the primary and secondary control. Then we may be able to do DHCP fingerprinting. We will be able to check see the host name, device family, and device type. And the last thing, which is very, very important, is change of authorization, so re-authentication. So there are, let's say, several moments where we want to do re-authentication. So first of all, maybe we want to re-authenticate the clients periodically. Like, for example, every 1 hour we want to re-authenticate the user. Or maybe we want to re-authenticate the user just because intentionally we want to do this. So on XMC, we can send a re-authentication request. And so right now we have several choices. The first choice, which is the choice on the Exos switches, is SNMP. We have a kind of SNMP re-authentication. If we will take another switch like a Cisco switch, we will probably use reuse change of authorization. Okay, so those are 2 mechanisms that we can use. And if we have a third-party switch, we have to know which mechanism we may use. In many cases, it's just by try and error approach, because it's not very well documented in many documentation. If the switch, the third-party switch, does not support SNMP authentication, radius authentication, we have the last resort, so we can do a port up, port down. This will re-authenticate the user. The issue with port up and down is that if you have like a phone connected to the switch and you have some computer connected behind the phone, and you will re-authenticate the computer, unfortunately, if someone will be on the voice call, the voice will be broken. Okay, so that's let's say some theory on how it works. So right now I would like to switch to the demo. Let's open our XMC. Okay. So we will be using our XMC in the lab. And the first thing which I wanted to comment, where I told that, let's say, third-party wireless is not supported on our platform, is this picture. So we have here an office with some access points connected, and we can do some stuff like, for example, we can see a coverage of the access point. Okay, so this thing we can only support on our wireless, only on our Extreme Wireless and Extreme Wireless Wing at this moment. Yes, so this is when I talk about that we don't support wireless. I meant about this. It was not about the ExtremeControl, which we of course can do. So now let's have a look at the other map. This is a map of our office. You can see some red connections. So this gives our current status of the office network. And I want to we have some fabric devices. We have some X460G2 switch connected to the fabric. We will be using this one for a moment. We have some VPEX stuff, but we want to focus on the third-party devices. So we have Aruba 2930F. We have here Juniper EX 2200. We have also Cisco 3750 here. We have also internet connectivity done by our FortiGate firewall, but we also have a Palo Alto firewall. So what you can see here is that we added those devices. We manage those devices using SNMP, and we can place those devices on the network diagram, and those connections between the switches are automatically discovered using LLDP. Okay, and also we can see nice pictures. Okay, so if we will take, like, for example, let's say Palo Alto firewall, we will see, we can configure a picture to it. It is not included in the XMC, but you can choose your own diagram, and you can import this to our XMC, so you will see a real how the device looks in reality. Okay, so when we see here a list of devices, then each device is added using SNMP protocol, and we will also add a CLI profile. So whenever you want to go to the device, you can open terminal, okay, and you automatically are logged into the terminal of the switch. Also, if you want to see some things, we have something which is called device view. In device view, we will see, for example, Aruba 2930. We see all the ports we have, and those are the standard. This is the standard view for most of the switches when we are using standard standard MIP files. Of course, we can expand this, because what we can see here, we can see some ports, we can see alarms related to this device, to this third-party device. We can see also device logs. So if we redirect logs from this device to XMC, we will see the logs. We will see also archives. Here we have the archives. We archive the configuration of the switches in the lab every day. And let's say we can even from here select last two or any archive files that we have on the list. We see that those files are different, and we can do a compare configuration. So we can see that there were some changes recently done. I mean, yesterday there was some changes done. And we see where exactly the change was done. Of course, as you see, we see configuration files for the third-party devices. So it means that we can also create archive. We can archive third-party devices, and we can archive a lot of devices. So let's take a list of the devices that we archived this morning at 1 o'clock. Let's say here we have a Cisco device. We can view a configuration file, yes, for the third-party device. Here we can have other devices like Fortinet, okay, and we can also see a Fortinet configuration file, okay. So we can do archives of the third-party devices. We can, of course, do also a firmware upgrades. So in terms of firmware upgrades, we can upload the firmware, and we can assign the firmware to a specific devices. So in this particular case, we assign the image to Catalyst 3750 24-port version. So we can do an upgrade. Okay, so now let's have a look. Sometimes we want to see some more stuff from the device. For example, we have a Cisco device and we want to, let's say, look a little bit deeper. And of course, our company is not focusing on supporting third-party devices, but with the community-driven approach, we may expand our XMC to add some additional stuff. So if we will look at the Aruba, and we will see what menus we can see here for this particular devices. Those are the basic menus. Okay. If we will go to the Cisco, we expand a little bit the information we can get from this device. We can get like power and fans. We can see the VLANs. We can see some other stuff. So those are the VLANs that are configured on the Cisco switch. Those are things that we can define by ourselves. We can use something which is called a flex view, and we can assign those flex view to a device view. So if we will create, let's say, a flex view that will take from the Cisco switch, will take a separate MIP values, OID values, which will represent the columns, we can do it. So you can, let's say, ask third-party device for any MIP value, for any SNMP value, and you can present it, and also you can also change this value. So there are, let's say, there is a menu. If you will go to the something which we call flex view. Flex view allow you to ask questions to devices. Here are some flex views created by the community, and we can use them to query the particular device for some information. So for example, we can query our Cisco device for some additional information. So let's see what we will get here. We will get all the ports. So we have 3750, it's an old switch, it's a fast Ethernet switch. We have the port link up, we can see the VLAN here. So the VLAN number is 18, okay? Let's say that I want to right now, I want to right now change the VLAN on the second port, yes, which is not connected. So I can go to the ShowHide Table editor. It will show me the port here on the bottom. When I will click here, I can, for example, change alias of the port. So I can put here an alias which will be called test, and I can change the VLAN on a third-party device on Cisco. So for example, I will put VLAN number 12. If I will do update, and then I will save, it will send a request to a Cisco switch, and we will set this information on the Cisco switch. So we will set an alias and we will send the VLAN. There is an error here. I did not really investigate what is the error, but it really sets those values. So right now, let's say if I will read the information from the device again, I see that I have those values. And if you don't believe me, we can go to the device, we can go to the Cisco device, then we can go to the terminal. I will put a password for enable, and I will put show running. And somewhere on where we have the port definition, it's here. We see here description test and switch port access VLAN 12. So this is the change we did using flex views. We were not really touching device from the CLI. We were doing this from the flex views. So the flex views are very, very powerful. You need to have some, let's say, knowledge how to create them. And there is a good information about those flex views. Also, this expansion of the device views here for several different devices. you can find this on the GitHub extremenetworks.com. Okay, so if you will go to the GitHub, you may find here XMC reports views, and you will see flex views here. And there is an instruction how to import the flex views for different devices. And as you can see, there is a lot of different devices. And if you will create your own flex views, then you may also share this information in the community. So it is very frequently updated place where we place the information how to integrate third-party devices with our XMC. Okay, I will go back to. Okay, so we have Aruba switch, we have a Cisco switch, we have Juniper switch, we have here Fortinet, we have Palo Alto. So those are the, let's say, the third-party, the representation of the third-party devices which we have in the lab. So right now, I would like to go to the ExtremeControl. I added all those switches because when I show you how the ExtremeControl works, I show you the diagram that we have. The switch sends a radius request to the ExtremeControl. And this radius request is protected by shared secrets. So we somehow need to connect our device with our radius servers, which we have here. So we added devices, and so we put that Cisco switch will use this particular NAC gateway, so which is Network Access Control Gateway. We have 2 of them. And we will be sending a specific attributes to this particular device. So there is a list of different attributes for Cisco, for Extreme, for different Extreme devices. But in reality, those are profiles that you can create, and you can copy and create your own depending on what you want to send to the switch or to the other device that is doing 802.1x or MAC authentication. Or, for example, you can also authenticate the access to the CLI or Telnet or SSH. If you use those protocols to access device, you can also authenticate against our Extreme control and pass this information to the Active Directory. So we can check, and we can really use our Active Directory accounts to log in, for example, to a switch. So what we have here in this definition. So we have a Cisco wired RFC 3580 and per user ACLs. So those are the attributes that we will send. And you have also some variables that we pass here from our policy mapping. So whenever we assign a user to a specific policy using our ExtremeControl, we fill those variables, and those variables are then with proper attributes will be sent to the particular switch. And we can, of course, add a lot of stuff here. Some vendor specific attributes we can use. You can add whatever you want. So let's have a look at the end system which we have. I have, let's say, there is a list of devices connected to the network, but I will try to limit this to Windows 10.01. Okay, so this is the device. It's a tested, it's a Windows 10 connected to somewhere. Right now, it is connected to the Exos switch, and the user is user B at the domain Extreme. Okay, and it's connected to port 101. We get a specific policy, and this is the policy which we send to this particular switch. The switch I showed you on the map, it was connected to the Fabric Connect. So we send there a Fabric Connect attributes. We are doing 802.1x X authentication with PAP. So this particular device is using, this particular Windows is using username and password, okay? So right now, if I want to connect this device, so this is my Windows which I am using. So just to show you, we may let's say log out from this computer. If I will sign out from this computer, then we will automatically see that this computer logged in as a host. So we have a user and computer authentication configured on this device. We also can see that the policy was changed to the computers. So if if there is no one logged in on the computer, it is connected to a different policy, and it is also placed in a different VLAN. So we may see, yeah, it's connected to the different VLAN. So right now, what I will do, I will reconnect this computer to a Cisco switch, okay? Or maybe first I will first start with the Aruba switch, okay? So I will change the connectivity on our lab. We did it in that way that we can reconnect the device to different virtual switches, and those virtual switches are connected to a specific devices, like for example Aruba 2930. So if I will do it, then this device is right now connected to a virtual switch on VMware, and the virtual switch is connected to Aruba switch. So right now we should, hopefully we will, we see that the authentication is exactly the same, but right now we are connected to Aruba switch. I have all those switches configured, let's say, in the same way. So we get the same VLANs, we get the same, let's say, behavior. So I can reconnect Windows from one device to the other, and we will get authentication. So right now we see the port is different. It is on Exos switch, it was 1:1. Here it's just 1. And also we send a different attribute. We send a standard attributes using standard RFC 3580. Okay, so if I want to connect to Cisco switch, I may go to a Cisco switch. Okay, so I will now browse and we'll go to the Cisco switch. We have two Cisco switches, but we will use the 3750. Okay, and right now, I think nothing will happen, but this is, let's say, no, we have. So right now we can see that we authenticate this computer to the Cisco 3750 on the port which is called Fast Ethernet 101. And also we send attributes at standard attributes, okay? So if we look at this right now, I will show you a Cisco. We use a Cisco wired RFC 3580 profile, which choose what attributes we send to this particular switch. So if we would like to use, for example, access list and put the access list on the switch, it is enough. I have the name of the access list configured on a custom for variable. So now I will do a filter ID equals to name of the access list and then in. Okay, so if I will change my attribute like that, and then I will enforce the configuration, I should send a different attribute to a Cisco device. So I will do re-authentication. So right now we are doing a radius re-authentication to the device. And we should see here that we send computers in access list to the switch. Of course, right now I will not show you because we let's say we want to show you some other stuff. I will not show you exactly, you know, how to configure this on the Cisco switch, or how to configure this on the HP switch, because it's not a training how to configure the third-party devices. We just send the information to those devices. And let's say if I will right now, for example, just log into the switch, log into the computer using, let's say, user B. Okay, so right now I will log in with a proper user to the device. We should get accounting profile and accounting in access list. So right now, if I will go to the switch, to the Cisco switch, oh, sorry. And we will do show authentication, show authentication session interface FA101. We will see that we got 12 VLAN number 12, and we got a filter ID, which is accounting. Okay, so we got a proper and we have a success. Yes, so we got a proper access list. If we will do show access list, I had to first of all create such an access list. Okay, so I created an access list which is called accounting, and I denied that the access to some strange strange IP address like 9999. For the users, I also created another just to show that we can really and apply the access list to this particular devices. Okay, this is the old way of doing, let's say, sending access list to the switch. So, for example, Cisco as well as Aruba, they can do different stuff with ACLs. So, first of all, we can also send ACLs directly from ExtremeControl. So, we are not configuring anything on the device, but we may send access list directly from the ExtremeControl. And I will show you an example of the access list for the Cisco and for the HP, which are doing the web portal redirection on the switch. And those are the lines that we send as a radius authentication response. So we basically send the access list in a vendor-specific attributes to the switch. When we compare this, for example, with our policies, there is, in our case, if we create a policy, we send the policy from our XMC to all the devices, which I think is better, because if we will manage to send this policy, then we will be sure that it will work. Okay, and in case of sending this using the radius, we don't know exactly what resources are available in a particular switch. So we may run out of the ACL resources, and we may not know it, or we will know it when all the different devices will connect to the switch, and we will send a lot of access list dynamically. Then we may run out of the resources. Okay. There is also another way which we may make the life easier. We have our policy. For those who knows our policies, you probably know that we can create roles for the users or for the devices, and we can apply dynamically those roles to connected computers. But we can also add here to policies, we can also add, as for example, Aruba switch, or we can add also a Cisco switch. So if we will assign this device, okay, we can add this device, and then I will enforce. And then what we can do, we can use what we call per user ACL. So our policies will be automatically translated to a specific dynamic ACLs that we will send to the device. I told you that I created the policy filtering out 9999, and here we see that accounting policy includes deny this IP and then permit all. Okay, I will show you the accounting. I will show you the users policy, which is very similar, but we just filter out Google DNS. Okay, similar stuff you will see on the HP, but HP is using a different vendor specific attribute. Okay, so just, and different also may use of also different format for the ACLs. So we support also automatic translation of our policies to Cisco and HP switches. And if we will see this configuration on our policy, it will look like that. We have accounting policy, and I created a service that will deny the traffic. So this is the ACL that I created on a policy. Okay, there is much more stuff. We also have a connect, where we have some integration. I have one of the integrations with the Palo Alto firewall. So you can also send the information about users that are connected to the network and their IP addresses to the Fortinet firewall or Palo Alto firewall or Checkpoint firewall. I just wanted to quickly show you that when you go to the firewall user monitor, you will see some devices, and this is the device which we were testing on. And we get also the user group to which the user belongs. So generally the idea is that we connect the device, we do ExtremeControl authentication, and ExtremeControl knows exactly what is the username and what is the IP address of this particular device. This information, which we called on firewall world user ID, we send to the Fortinet, we can send it to the Palo Alto Checkpoint, and we can then build our firewall rules based on the group of the users and not on the IP subnet ranges. Okay, I do not have, let's say it's a topic by itself. We can also work our XMC, and ExtremeControl can work in a different way. It can get information from the IPS, IDS devices. It might be a firewall. If we will only get the information about the IP address which causes the problem on the network, XMC may get this information, parse the information from the syslog, because the syslog is usually the easiest way to integrate the third-party device with our ExtremeControl. And we get the information from the syslog, and we can re-authenticate and put the user to the quarantine if we will find out that there is some, let's say, risk detected by our IPS or IDS system. Okay, so I want to give some time to my colleagues. I could speak, let's say, a little bit more, but I want to give the floor to my colleagues just to show other stuff. So I want, Timo, the floor is yours, and I hope you are on the line.
Yes, I am. Hopefully everybody actually can hear me, and I will start sharing right away. So basically what I want to touch here is the Extreme Cloud IQ in conjunction with ExtremeControl. So basically, why would you actually want to do that is of course, obviously for visibility and control. But basically, if we think about Extreme Cloud IQ, overall, it's a cloud-based management platform for basically end-to-end networking. You will get the visibility from the Cloud IQ already, but in some sense you might have, like Peter just presented you might have third-party devices in your network. You might have something that is not compatible with the Extreme Cloud IQ in your network. So basically, by leveraging Extreme Management Center and ExtremeControl, you will basically get centralized view of all of the connected devices and have the ability to actually control them. So visibility control, obviously really important things in terms of network security and overall management. So you have to know and understand what you actually have in the network. So 5 functions of ExtremeControl: so device detection, device and user authentication, assessment, authorization and accounting, and remediation. I will not actually touch these as deep as I was thinking about, because we are a little bit lacking behind in the schedule, but I truly hope that you actually got a grasp on what the ExtremeControl is and what you actually can do in the previous presentation. But yeah, the Q&A is always open. So how do we actually do this? It's in my opinion, it's really simple. So there are 5 simple steps to do in the Cloud IQ. So you have to configure SNMP. You have to enable the SNMP in the device template, so we actually can add the devices in our XMC. You have to configure the radius servers. You have to configure the user profiles, and then you have to create the SSID using 802.1x authentication. So those are pretty trivial steps. I will actually go through the UI on the Cloud IQ and on the ExtremeControl side of things as well, how we actually do this in real life. So the XMC and the control basically create, if necessary, the SNMP profiles for access points, depending on what kind of profiles you are using. You can reuse the existing ones, add the access points to the XMC and control, configure rules, roles, and policy mappings. So basically 7 to 8 simple steps, depending what you actually already have. So even Grandma Esmeralda here thinks it's really trivial. So everybody should be able to do it. So one basically caveat that I want to mention is that basically, because we have to add the access points as radius clients, it is advised to actually use static DHCP leases for the access points. So so that once the access point gets its IP address, it will not change. If it changes, then of course the XMC will lose the connectivity to the access point itself. So this is something that is currently you have to take in consideration. But anyway, I think without any further slides, I will actually go into the UI part. So in Cloud IQ, I'll zoom in a little bit just to be sure that everybody sees it correctly. So in here, if we start the configurations, so the first thing was to configure the SNMP. So we basically include that in our network policies. So I will edit my network policies. I will go to the additional settings and SNMP server. So here we have those configurations. And basically you can add, edit, or delete those. So basically I have already added these two. So we can actually have a look. So I'm using the standard built-in SNMP version 3 credentials that we have in our XMC as default. So there is nothing fancy there. So you will create two different SNMP server objects. Basically here, so one for the XMC, one for the NAC. So next part is to configure or enable basically the SNMP in the access point uplinks. So basically those are part of the device templates, but before that actually you have to go and do a copy of the port types basically. So in here, if you go configure common objects, port types, you can actually copy, select the uplink port and clone it and basically give it a new name. So new uplink. Okay, and clone it. And basically then after we edit the port or the device template, basically we can enable the SNMP. So if we go back to our network policies and device templates, here I have actually added the uplink with SNMP into the AP already. And basically, if we edit that, what you have to do is go and enable this tick box. So then SNMP is enabled on that particular port. So next part is to configure the radius part. So once again, if we go to our common objects and we go to authentication, and there we have our A3 radius servers, for example, we can add the new ones here. So I've already added that. So basically give it shared secret, IP address, host name, whatever you want to actually utilize on this, and add those in place. The next part is basically the user profiles. So those are actually in the common objects as well, and in the policies, and we have user profiles. So I have already created a couple of user profiles here, end systems and IoT. And basically what we are using is both of these. So this will go to VLAN 100, and the end systems, I think it was VLAN 12 or something like that. And basically for the IoT, we have additional firewall rules enabled. So we are denying PGP, FTP, ICMP, email services, Telnet, SSH, something like standard IoT devices or connected devices should not be actually utilizing anyways. So these are the profiles. And basically one final thing that we actually need to do in the network policy is to create the SSID itself. So configure network policies, and on the wireless networks, we have created TechTalks 1X, and authentication is basically enterprise VPA2, VPA3, .1X, I'm using VPA2 at this point. And this is the main part. So basically you will add your authentication servers by adding those or selecting those from the list in here. And then what you need to do is select your default user profile. I'm using the end systems here. It could be something else. And then we want to apply different user profiles to different clients and user groups. And we are using standard radius attributes. So if you remember from Peter's presentation, there was these different filter ID or filter attributes that you can actually send to specific devices. So we are using just standard filter ID as an attribute. And basically how we are leveraging that is by sending specific keywords or basically user profile names as the radius attribute back. So we can utilize different user roles based on that. So that's about it basically. And after that, you will need to go into the XMC and basically add the device, the access point here with the proper SNMP credentials or SNMP profile. Then what we need to do is go to the access control engine and basically add the APs as radius clients here. And here you can see that what we are actually utilizing is the filter ID as the radius attributes to send. And we have enabled accounting. So after that, you basically create different rules for those connected clients. And I have those here. So nsystems.1x user is in the in our Active Directory, part of the admins group. And then we have our general population, which will go to the IoT profile. And basically, same here, we have our general population security group in the Active Directory, and we are checking the membership. And based on that, we actually are putting those profiles in place. So what we actually see here is if we take Grandma Esmeralda, for example, we can see that she is using MacBook username, authentication type. It is connected to that particular access point. It's macOS 10.7, physical device identities and all that stuff. So basically the similar way of viewing the actual clients like you are gotten used to in some sense if you have extreme management, extreme control in previous deployments and in your wired network and so forth. So basically getting that same visibility, same control that you have used to in wired data center access and all those different places in the network. So this is how it works in really quickly, and here you can actually see that I have been logged in with my iPhone, and I belong into the admins group, so I am in different policies, and basically Esmeralda here is general population, so it's in IoT profile. And if we look at the same thing from our client view, we should be able to see those usernames here as well. OS types, we can see the VLANs for the different users. So VLAN 12, VLAN 100, and the user profiles. So that's about it from my side. So it's really quick, and I hope that this makes sense to you guys, and I hope that we will see more Extreme Cloud IQ and management control integrations in the future. So thanks from my side, and I think Emre has the final slot for 50 minutes still left. So I will give him the possibility to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Timo. So let me share my screen. So I hope you guys can see my screen. So now the last part will be about the extreme compliance third-party support. So no worries, I have like around 100 slides. So I managed to finish around 15 minutes. Okay, just kidding. So first of all, let me give a brief information about extreme compliance, or it's also known as the information governance engine. So basically what we are doing with this is we are creating configuration baselines, and these can be according to some predefined compliance standards, which are already available by default on XMC, Extreme Compliance. These are HIPAA standards for healthcare, or PCI or GDPR compliances, okay? And what we are doing is we are basically checking the configurations of the network devices, and also this includes the wireless events in terms of rogue APs or etc. Okay, so you can create your custom test sets, and this also includes any third-party device. So for example, let's imagine that you have hundreds of switches in your environments, and you would like to keep Telnet disabled, SNMP version 1 disabled, not configured, but it's not easy to check all your devices at the same time. Okay, so you can get some backups, compare those backups, but you need to do some manual work. So with extreme compliance, and together with the automation tools of like workflows, our goal is to basically stop any manual process, and to check these network configurations on a scheduled and automated fashion, okay? So without further ado, I'm gonna skip the slides, and I would like to switch to the live demonstration. So first of all, I would like to walk you through the extreme compliance part, which you can switch from the left pane of Extreme Management Center. I know most of you are now familiar with this, with our solution, Extreme Management Center. So when you go to the Extreme Compliance, there are two main tabs. One of them is the dashboard, where you can see all your test results in terms of different regimes. These are what we call regimes. So these are the three predefined regimes, the PCI, HIPAA, and GDPR. And now I'm going to walk you through to create another regime just to check configurations of a Cisco device, okay? And as you can see, you can see the failed devices, the failed tests, and the scores over time is also listed. And if you would like to see one specific switch and all the tests that are being conducted for this switch, you can also see them, right? So the failed test, the pass test, and also the remedy actions. So for example, my telnet was enabled, and how can I disable it? So you can also configure the remedy actions, which if you don't do any further action, it will be a manual process. So you need to go to the switch and do the remedy action. But now in our demonstration, we will also incorporate this with workflows to have a fully automated experience for you guys, okay? So now let me switch to my own, my lab, right? And here you can see the device lists, and these are listed according to the device type. And I have here my Cisco 3750 device. So with the extreme compliance, with the new test sets, we will check if the NTP server is configured or not. Okay, so we would like NTP to be configured and to be consistent across all our Cisco network infrastructure. So first of all, what I would like to show you is if I have already configured the NTP, okay? So as you can see here, I have two NTP servers that are already configured. So now let's go to the compliance and let's create a test set to check the NTP server configuration, okay? So you just need to go to the audit tests and you can add a regime and name it whatever you would like. And also if wireless events you would like to include, you can also check this box as well, okay? So these are already all the tests that we have with our own equipment with different operating systems. As you all know, we have Exos, we have BOSS, VSP switches, the wireless wing. So it's already available by default. So what we will now do is I'm going to switch to the Cisco regime that I created to save some seconds. And now I'm going to add a test. Okay, so this will be called NTP server enable. Okay, so the regime, it will be included in the Cisco regime, and the device type will be Cisco 3750. But this is important because all the other ones that are already available by default. So if you would like to add a new device type, you need to go to the XMC via shell, and you need to go to the governance engine folder and add the sys object ID for that specific device model. Okay, so I just select the Cisco 3750, which I already added the sys object ID. And now the test condition should be, of course, a match. And I need to add a regular expression. So a regular expression is a set of or a sequence of characters that define a search criteria. And there are several websites, like for example, regex101.com is one of them, where you can test your strings and test your regular expression. So I already copied and pasted the whole configuration of the Cisco device, including the NTP servers. What I need to do right now is to exactly find the set of expressions that define the NTP server configuration line. Okay, so I'm gonna start with, so of course you, at the right bottom, you can see what all these factors mean, right? So I'm gonna start with a cap and \s, followed by a star. So this means for all the lines I started, okay? I started my search, including the white spaces. So \s means white space. So now I'm ready to start to search for the NTP server. So I type NTP, and you can see as soon as I start typing, now I quote these NTP words, okay? But it's not enough. So I need to follow by a white space, and I also need to follow right server. So now NTP server is also called. And I need to add another white space. Now I need to follow the digits, okay? So now I'm in the IP address part. So \d is the digits, but an IP address can be one or more digits. So I need to add a plus sign. This means one or more digits till it hits another character. In this case, it's a dot. So I need to put the dots, and I need to go on like this till I finish writing my regular expression. Okay, I think it's one more. And here it is. So I quote all the NTP server lines, including the IP addresses. So what I need to do is just I copy all this regular expression, and I go back to my XMC compliance, and I'm gonna paste this to this regex part. So another, let's say, optional, but it's quite user-friendly parts are the examples. In this case, I need to write the remedy action to enable the NTP server in the Cisco device, right? So it's going to be configuration terminal, and you need to specify the IP addresses. You need to exit, and you need to save the configuration. So this is just for the administrator to understand if the test fails. These are the steps that he needs to take if he's not using workflows for the automation part. And for the advisor, you can write whatever you want. So NTP is critical. Let's say, let's leave it like this. Okay, so now this is my tests, and I edit this test in the Cisco regime. Okay, so you can run this regime in two ways. So you can either do it via this icon that you can run the regime. It will list you all the devices available on XMC, and you can select Cisco and run this test. But what rather I would do is I will go to the network and archive parts, which you can also incorporate this with getting the backups of the configurations. Okay, so archive management is a tool to retrieve your backups of the configuration, compare them, and you can do this on a scheduled basis, right? So you can see in the right window that you can schedule it, for example, on a weekly basis. And in the setup part, you can see that I can also run the compliance together with getting the archives of the configuration. So in this case, I'm going to select the Cisco regime, right? And since it's already available, I can just right click and stamp a new version of my configuration backup, okay? So I can go to the operations part to check how it's looking in terms of getting the configuration. So now the inventory audit part started. So in the meantime, let's go back to the compliance. And in the dashboard, if I go to the Cisco regime parts, so currently the previous test was about checking the SSH and telnet, which was already predefined or I customly created for the Cisco devices. And now for the next compliance tests, we will also have the NTP server check, okay? And let me also show you in the meantime. So all these tests, you can also export to PDF, and the report will be generated and downloaded. So you can later on do additional analysis, okay? Like this, you will see all the device score information, what are the tests are conducted, and the advisory and the examples. So in the meantime, the compliance audit finished. And as you can see here, I have 2 tests and 1 failed scenario. So let me refresh this one, and you're going to see a new test and my new score, which is 66. Still not perfect. I want to be perfect anyway. So let me go to which tests are failed, SSH, which we are not interested in, but the NTP server is passed. Okay, so it checked the NTP server configuration. It was there. And then I passed the test. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go back to the CLI and this time disable the NTP server. Okay, so I know that we are running out of time, but I would like to show you the full automation story. So if you can bear with me for a couple of more minutes. Okay, so now let me again show you the NTP configuration, and I'm gonna do no NTP server 9.10 and 11. Okay. Okay, so I saved the configuration. So now, in order to trigger an automated action, depending on a result of an depending on a result of a compliance test. Okay, so we can create an event so that if the compliance test fails, I will get an alarm about this one. Okay, and the alarm configuration looks like this, because in the alarm configuration you can do several actions. Okay, so what I'm catching here is I'm catching the syslog, and in terms of the criteria, the status should be failed and the device type should be 3750. Okay, which I'm going to take from the syslog messages. So I'm searching for these patterns, and in the action, as probably most of you already know, you can send an email, you can send a syslog, or you can trigger a task. And in this case, our task is triggering a workflow. So let me quickly walk you through the workflow. Don't worry about this. If you are not confident about what workflow is, we will have a separate session dedicated for scripting and workflows. Okay. So in this case, I will not take a lot of time to explain you what all this is about, but just to let you know, the workflow is triggered by the events. By the alarm, and then it's parsing all the Cisco compliance tests. It's preparing for the switch remediation, preparing the CLI configurations, and if the remediation is required, in this case it will be, so it will take this path, and it will perform the remediation, and at the end, if the remediation is successful or not, I will receive an email as an IT administrator. Okay, so now let me go back to the archive once more. and I'm going to stamp a new version of my archive. In this case, it will again trigger a compliance test and as well as the workflow in this case. So, okay, so let's hold our breaths for a second or for 30 seconds if you can do that. And if there's any guys named Murphy in the participants, please disconnect at this point. So let me go to the compliance and let me close this one so we can follow the current operations. Okay, so it's still taking the backup of the configuration. And once it's finished, it will first trigger the compliance, as I mentioned, and then we hope for the workflow to be triggered to correct the let's say failed tests. In this case, the NTP server should be automatically configured once again. Okay, so now I see the pass test is only one and the failed is two. So if I refresh this one, you're going to see that, oops. You're going to see that my score dropped. And if I go to the tasks and workflow dashboards, now in a couple of seconds, I'm expecting another workflow to be triggered here so that the corrective action will be taken. And you can also see like historical, all the workflows that are already triggered here. And there's in the above dashboard, the active workflows, okay, so now I was trying to gain some time, and now we can see that the workflow is currently being generated, and you can follow all for the green lines. Okay, so now my remediation is successful, and you can easily see that in the workflow, all the green boxes, if you follow the green boxes, you will see if which path is taken. Okay, so if we check this box and show the output, for example, you will see what the script is doing. It's basically looking at the show configuration. If it cannot find the NTP server, then it's adding those two NTP server IP addresses to the configuration, right? And now for the last thing, I would like to make you all sure of the fact that it actually write the configuration. So I'm a little type of the suspicious guy. So I would like to also check it by myself and show configuration include NTP. Okay, so you can see the NTP servers are configured. And as I am the IT administrator of this network, I would like to also see it in my email box. Okay, so you can see that the switch remediation is also sent to my email with all the necessary information about the audit status, the test being conducted, and all the configuration lines that are pushed to my switch. I can see that in my mailbox. So that concludes my demonstration, and thank you for your time and for your additional minutes that you saved for us. And now I guess it's over to you, Kirill.
Yes, thank you, Emre. We are very conscious about the time, guys, so I promise that my part will take not more than 2-3 minutes. Just to keep you busy in the meantime, while I'm still sharing my screen, I would like to launch this poll. Beautiful thing. Okay, now you should see some questions actually coming in. So in the meantime, I will quickly share my slides. Here it is. So hopefully you can see that. Okay, just while you are answering the questions, just a few closing words. So first of all, here is the schedule of our next session. So I have highlighted the next one, which is coming next week, next Thursday, the same time in the morning, 10 a.m. In the Central European time zone. we will be talking about Extreme Cloud IQ, our new and renovated cloud platform for everything. And we will do it in the same interactive way. So a lot of demonstrations, a lot of live access to the platform itself. And we would like to show you how you can see the full picture in the cloud. So basically that means that we will be looking not only at the access points, not only at the wireless side of things, but everything. All right, so the next sessions are shown in the slide. So just so that you know, if you want to kind of remind yourself of, okay, what's coming next, when the next session is, you can always do so by going into the registration link and you will see all the sessions over there. All right, so one more thing that I would like to mention as well as we always do on the on-site Tech Talks events, we will have some special sessions for Extreme Heroes, for our beloved technical community of Extreme Heroes. So if you are a part of this program, if you are an Extreme Hero, stay tuned and wait for some updates. We promise that we'll bring you some really, really nice sessions. All right, so just to close everything up, this session was brought to you by the beautiful team of Eastern Europe and Nordics and the Benelux. Below the corporate logo, you can see the email of the systems engineers. So it's pretty simple, EN_SC, which stands for Eastern Europe and Nordics _systems engineers. So if you still have any questions that you would like to have our attention drawn to, just drop us an email and we'll figure out how to help you. We still have some questions in the Q&A panel. I think just a few of those. We try to answer all of them. I can tell you that at some point in time, you made our team of ASCs answering the questions a bit sweaty, but that's absolutely okay. So all the questions that have not been answered so far will be answered offline, and we will send, as I said, as I promised, we will send all the answers to you over email, as well as the links to the recording and the slideware that was used during the session. I'm Kirill Zhukov. Thank you very much for joining, and stay tuned and stay safe. Goodbye, guys.